shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Ambassador Raouf Saad, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Ambassador Saad, why did Egypt emphasize the infrastructure, industrialization and technology transfer as key pillar of the African development?
But we are talking about the visit to Korea, no?
Yes, the current visit, the importance of such meetings between the African states and Korea, and how that is contributing to accelerate the sustainable development across the African continent.
That's a bit sophisticated question, but let me put it this way. I think it's if we are talking about Korea, I think it's very important, and the visit by itself is very important because Korea, when it started its development process, it was far below Egypt's level, but today she has become one of the strongest emerging countries, and that's why it represents a kind of model for Egypt in order to ensure that that Egypt not only can reach that level but can go far beyond it. Second is that Korea has very strong economic relationship with Egypt, and its presence, particularly through its car industry, is providing such a strong presence of Korea and the Egyptian market, and that's why that its economic reforms are also represent a kind of not necessarily identical measures. Third is that this is the first meeting, I think, between Dr. Abdulhadi in his capacity as the Minister of International Cooperation, and that makes difference, And so to combine between foreign policy and the international cooperation, this is such an excellent combination. If we move to Africa, I think this is crucial because Africa has become a target for all countries. Being maybe that it looks like a poor continent on the surface, but it is the richest existing continent in terms of natural resources, mineral resources, industrial resources, so on and so forth. So to have a kind of a trio partnership between Korea and Egypt, in order to cooperate with two hats into Africa, that would provide Africa a new example of partnership. Because as we all know that all players, the new players are all very active in the continent, but I think Africa needs more trustworthy partners, and I think if Korea and Egypt can go together in the African continent with something very important here, that both Egypt and Korea are or has been developing a kind of comparative advantage in many areas. And here I want just to make sure, to underline that comparative advantage is not the relative advantage. Comparative advantage means that the basis is this technology. And both Egypt and Korea has the different areas of comparative advantage, and they have to develop a package of the areas where both have this competitive advantage, and in order to cope with what Africa needs. Take into consideration here, Africa is not all of them are still and a low level. Some of the countries, for example, Kenya is #1 in the IT. So this is such a very wonderful initiative that I would call it or qualify it for Egypt as a re-entry into Africa, and that would represent special importance not only in economic reforms, not only in economic development, so on, but it represents a political important move in order to provide the African countries with a kind of cushion against, different, infiltration efforts by some countries, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
I mean, lately the recognition of Israel, of Somaliland, and it's established an embassy there. It's kind of an infiltration not only into the African countries, but would threaten the whole area with instability and problems among the countries, including in Suez Canal and the Red Sea.
Yes. Ambassador Saad, how do you see the peace, the security and economic development actually interconnected in Africa, and how that was actually reflected in the ongoing ministerial meeting taking place in Seoul?
Egypt is, Africa unfortunately is suffering from many disputes and military conflicts among some of the countries. And in order to ensure that there is a development process that could take place, you have to show stability. So it is very important to have, the kind of approach that well calculated, well considered, well studied, in order to establish, a credibility of presence and a possibility in order to help settling the disputes taking place there. Don't forget that Egypt has such not only experience in the reconstruction or in the dispute settlements, but we have a very special center for that is attached to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that would be extremely helpful as a pioneering role of Egypt in Africa, taking into consideration that if you remember that since 2019, since when President Sisi assumed the presidency of the African Union, Africa has become a new strategic priority for Egypt, and that's why I think that was very much materialized, in convening the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh that Egypt held on behalf of Africa. So this is a kind of example that represents that it's the relation with Africa is no longer statements or slogans or support but we are coming now into a field cooperation, and in order to ensure stability for the African countries. And of course, one basic factor to ensure stability is economic development. Again, there is something very important, since we mentioned, I referred to COP27. Many disputes that are taking place from, in Africa is due to the environmental problems that is causing migration, displacement, and as well as disputes. So if you look at some of we have just mentioned, you and me, you will find that there's a long list of areas where cooperation is very credible and very possible, and the support, the mutual support between Korea and Africa, and the possibility of combining of the expertise and experience of both countries in order to establish a new period of partnership with African countries.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Ambassador, since you have mentioned the climate issue, how can the Korean-African cooperation actually help to address the climate-related challenges facing the African continent in particular? This is a very promising area, and but environment has become a cross-cutting area with all products, services, so on and so forth. And you cannot deal with, in order to deal appropriately with the climate and environmental problems, you need two things. One is the finance, in order to ensure that you can, decrease the emissions, so on and so forth, and you need technology. And both are, the African countries, most of them are short of these two requirements. So I think in this area, Egypt can provide
a wealth of experience in terms of how to deal with the environmental and climate change problems. And Korea, in addition to its experience in this area, I think through the banks that we are talking about, can help in order to secure finance. So, but this is something that will have to be considered on the basis of scientific and technical consideration that both countries, Korea and Egypt, would provide, a kind of a wonderful marriage of expertise and experience.
Indeed. Ambassador Raouf Saad, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for your very precious input, sir. And we'll go to a short break, and after that we'll be back to resume our program, so stay tuned.